Hi, everybody. My name is Fred Dillon. I am the co-author of this book from Corwin, which is about the 5 to Thrive series, and it answers the questions for teachers about teaching secondary mathematics. I am a career mathematics teacher. I have taught in the classroom for over 35 years. I am now a mathematics coach and provide professional development, and I live outside of Cleveland, Ohio. My co-authors are going to introduce themselves now.
Hello, my name is Andrea Chang. I am a high school math teacher in Union City, California. I've taught for 10 years and I've taught at a wide range of different schools.
Hi, I'm Ayana Perry, and I am a associate director for Teaching Fellows Programs at the Knowles Teacher Initiative. I have worked for close to 10 years supporting math and science teachers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Oots, and I'm a recently retired middle school math teacher in Pinellas County, Florida.
When we wrote this book, one of the things we wanted to make sure that it applied for was that it could work for new teachers, veteran teachers, people that were shifting in their career to new things. So we wanted to have all the questions that we had as teachers throughout our careers answered in one place. And there are a lot of different things that come up, and we've decided on some smaller questions to answer for you today. One of the things that comes up frequently when I'm working with teachers is teachers want to know how they can help students when the students are at a standstill in problem solving. So there are two things I'd like you to think about that I have found to be helpful when I work with students. One of them is to use a protocol called Notice and Wonder, which you may have seen from the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics or from the Math Forum when it existed. Notice and Wonder is I would walk up to a group of students, perhaps that say, we just don't know what to do. And I'd focus them on the problem and ask them, each of you write down 2 or 3 different things you notice. And when I come back in 1 minute, and I make sure I have a timeline so that there's an urgency to what they're doing, we are going to discuss what you noticed. Those notices frequently get the students unstuck and get them to start thinking about the problem in an open way. Another thing that I have that I find to be very helpful for students is asking an individual or a group, tell me an answer that cannot possibly work. And they might say like, well, the answer can't be 100. I'm like, why not? Engaging with the problem in that way helps the students start thinking about the problem and taking away the restrictions they have in their mind so that they can move forward. Now, one of the things when I talk about that is you're like, well, that means you've had some plans and tasks in place. So Ayana is going to talk to us briefly. One of the questions we hear frequently is, how do I plan for my lessons?
Thanks, Fred. One of the things that's really hard about teaching as a beginning teacher is knowing what's the order of the things that you're teaching, what's most important to pay attention to on a pacing guide if you have one at your school, or how do you pull in all of the curricular resources that you have. And so one of the things that I would suggest is to talk to one of your colleagues, talk to a veteran teacher at the school, talk to someone who has taught your class before to really think about in the first week, what are the things that I need to make sure that students understand or that I understand students have engaged with before as a part of your early lesson planning. I'd also say really try to think about how to write your learning goal. You know, one of the things that's really important for a lesson plan is to make sure that all the activities that you're doing connect directly to a learning goal that you have. And there are a range of ways to think about writing a learning goal. In our book, we talk about thinking about exactly what you hope students would be able to do at the end of it, and also how you hope they get there. So something like at the end of this activity, students will be able to factor multiple forms of a quadratic equation. And I want them to do that using box method or, like area method, something like that.
So when you think about that, another thing that comes up is you're going to have students that have different needs in the classroom. You're going to have students that have IEPs, students that are on 504 plans. You might have some English language learner students or EL students, and you need to support those. So I'm curious, Andrea, I know you've worked a lot with this. What are some things you could tell people about how they can support their students on IEPs or 504 plans?
Yeah, thanks, Fred. I believe that you can do many different things to help those students with IEP and 504 plans. The first tip I would give teachers is to read the IEP plan very carefully and read it throughout the year. It's just really important that you reference it, especially when you're looking at what the disability is that the student has and what they need to be able to succeed in your classroom. Secondly, I would recommend to adapt your teaching in a way that helps that lesson plan. For example, if your student has an auditory disability, that means they hear different things than than their peers. I would recommend having visuals available for those students, making sure that those visuals are nice and clear, very beautiful, and very easy for students to understand. Lastly, I would say for those lesson plans, I would have you just communicate as best as you can with your student to check in with them, to be able to see how they are doing and what it is that they are learning and what it is that they may need in that particular moment.
Thanks, Andrea. And while you're here, why don't we talk about, I know you've done a lot of work with EL students. What are some specific supports for EL students when you're doing your lessons as well?
I think for EL students, it's very important to take the time to speak very slowly, very clearly, and having those directions and different anchors for students to be able to hang on to. One anchor that you can have is simply having a word wall or a place where students can see very important words, being able to access those as they need to, and referencing them because they'll be using those keywords throughout their day and throughout their lesson. Lastly, I think the biggest thing you can do for the newcomer students, especially the ones that are new to the country, is just partner them with someone from their home country or someone who speaks the language, because that partnering allows them to have that social aspect of feeling connected to the community, to the classroom, and also have someone to reach out to when they need support in learning the language.
Great, thanks. So that kind of takes us back to a question that Ayana can answer, because she mentioned before you had to have content goals, but now you see that your content goals can be expanded because you're addressing different student needs. So Ayana, how do you combine content goals and non-curricular goals?
Thanks. It's really important to think about the kind of classroom community you want to build and then what your goals are for the students that you're teaching. And so one of the ways to really think about combining your content goals, your process goals, your maybe social learning goals is to have students work in groups, right? Like one of the things you want to do is really try to work in groups with students and have them work with a variety of people in the classroom so that they value and understand the perspectives that their classmates bring. Another thing to think about is having some downtime. Like one of the really good things about math class is that you can laugh in math class. There's lots of fun that can happen in a class. And once you're able to really work to help students like enjoy each other's company and enjoy the math and share their brilliant ideas and their genius thinking, you're able to really bring together the learning goals and the social goals and the process goals. At the end of all of that, students will be able to show you that they can persevere, that they can pay attention and notice pattern. All of that is a part of the class, but this is a class of people. And so you really want to make sure that the people enjoy the time they spend together.
Thanks. And that leads to an idea that I like to talk about with teachers, and that is they wonder, what should the feedback I give my students look like or sound like? And that means you want to have good feedback. When you think about what you just heard, you've got different goals for students, and you want to make sure you're keeping them on track for what your goals are, curricular and non-curricular. So some things to think about with feedback are that good feedback is immediate. It's not something like you walk around and say nothing during the period. At the end of the day, you're like, Ayana, you did a good job on this. She needs that feedback right away. It should be provided consistently throughout the class so that students get used to having feedback from you. And by feedback, that does not mean you're saying, you should do this step here. It means you're giving them some things that are based on the work that you see, not that you wish you could see, not that you want to funnel them to a specific solution, but it's based on their work. It is focused on specific next steps for students to think about. I look at those things as like assessing questions. So you're looking at their work and you're finding out what they know. And based on that work, you're then able to ask advancing questions that move the students forward. And keep in mind that good feedback doesn't have to just come from you. When you have built a community in your classroom, students start giving feedback to each other. So that really helps build the community at that point. And one of the key things about the community is it doesn't stop in your classroom. And Jen, what's one of the things you could talk about with building relationships with caregivers and having that larger community with the school.
Thanks, Fred. One of the things I like to do at the beginning of the year is to call 2 to 3 parents or caregivers every night. And I only share positive things. So a lot of times I'll start with something like, oh, let me tell you about one of my favorite things that happened today. And I usually try to start with some of the kids that I can tell right away are going to need a little extra love. It's funny because it's great for parents. Parents always remember when I call them and what I've said to them. And then if I have to call back later in the year about something that maybe isn't as positive, I've had that start with them. The students come to school the next day with big smiles and they're so proud that their parents are proud of them. And it's just a good way to build a relationship with the kids. But I'll tell you, as funny as it is, it's best for me because it makes me happy. When you call parents and let them know how great their kids are, it just, it makes my life better. And I also notice it helps me to want to be an advocate for the kids throughout the year once I've spoken to their parents.
Thanks. That's great. Besides that, one of the ways we interact with parents is that we have conferences throughout the year, and it might be open house, it might be a parent conference day, it might be having a parent come in to talk with you and a guidance counselor or something. What are some things that teachers need to know about setting up and having conferences?
That's a good question. I always consider when I'm speaking with parents and caregivers that they're sharing with me their most precious and valuable gift. And, they love that child more than anything and want the best for them. So my big job is to make them understand that we're working together. I always think of this little rule. Whenever I'm talking to a parent, I always pretend in my mind that the kid is there. And whenever I'm talking to a student in the classroom, I always think in my mind that the parent is there. Just making sure I'm always using kind and uplifting words and always giving both the parents and the students the benefit of the doubt. My 2 main rules are, number 1, if I'm angry about something, I always wait. I wait to call because I can tell you if I call angry, I will be appearing unprofessional. I also sometimes wait, well, not sometimes, always wait if I'm sending an email and I'm angry about something. If I wait and look at it later, I tend to soften my words. The other rule that I have is I never say no. Instead, what I say is, here's what I can do for you. So if a parent has an unreasonable request, instead of saying, no, I can't do that, I'll just say, here is what I can do for you.
That's great. I like that last part a lot. I'm hoping all the things you've heard from us give you an idea of what we thought was important for you to know and put into our book. And there are more questions about all sorts of things, about what formative assessment looks like, how to teach problem solving, what it means to teach critical thinking skills with students. There's a wide variety of things covered in this, and we hope you'll take the time to look at that. So on behalf of the author team, thanks for listening to us, and we hope you have a great school year.